everybody. Welcome to PCS 101. I am the instructor, Lillian Ruiz. And first, I wanted to thank you for registering registering in this class because, as you know, this is a most unusual semester, but we continue ahead. But thank you for your motivation and your energy and your fortitude for being able to take a class with all of the challenges that we are all facing. And what I thought I would do is tell you a little bit about the class itself. A public speaking class should be held live, and this is the way I would normally teach this class. But again, circumstances dictate that we do things a little bit differently. So I thought I could go through with you and tell you some of the adaptations that I've made to the course now that we are taking the course on an online format. And if you will look at our Moodle site up above, there's a folder entitled Syllabi and Other Documents. And what I've uploaded there is a copy of our syllabus and our course outline. That is what I'm going to be reviewing during today's video. So you might want to stop the video here and access a copy of that syllabus and outline as I go through it. Or you may just want to listen as I go through the various pieces of it. And basically, the syllabus begins with some contact information where my name is listed, Lillian Ruiz, and most students ask almost always, what should I call you? And I respond, whatever you're comfortable with. Most people call me Lillian, so I'm pretty informal. My email is there, which is just my surname, no first initial, because when I started at GCC, there wasn't even an email system. That was 28 years ago. And when we began our email system, it was with just purely surname. So you can get an idea how long someone's been at the college based on their email address. My phone is there, and you can always leave a voicemail. And you can see that I've set aside some optional times where we could interact with one another, and they are just that, optional. The first is an optional Moodle chat room. That'll be held every Tuesday from 1:30 to 2 o'clock. So I will be in that chat room, and you're free to join that chat room. And again, you can find the link for that in the upper section of our Moodle site. And think of it as a kind of office hour, but devoted just for our class. So I have no particular agenda. It's basically up to anybody who joins as to what we discuss. And I'll be doing something similar with Zoom on Thursdays, also from 1:30 to 2 o'clock. And again, you can see that I've indicated the link for that. And again, it's optional. The idea is that anybody who joins, we can talk about anything related to the class. And of course, if you needed to make an appointment with me at another time, you can always do that. And we can schedule something either via Zoom or chat room or telephone. I want to try to be as flexible and open as possible to be available to you. In terms of the textbook, yes, there is a text, and I know that's sometimes surprising for public speaking. It's entitled The Principles of Public Speaking, 18th edition by German. And it's a book that basically reviews all of the elements of putting together a speech. And I know some of them you probably already know, and some of them are intuitive, but it also introduces you to some language associated with the discipline. And I can tell you right now, you can use an older edition of the book. So if you can find the book online, certainly you can purchase it there. It's available at the GCC bookstore. And if you find an older edition somewhere else, you can purchase that as well. What I'm going to be doing is making class videos, much like this one, talking about the content of the class text. And most of the class text will be during the early part of the semester to help prepare us for actually delivering speeches. And then the latter part of the semester is when we actually get to deliver speeches. And what I wanted to do was to offer options about how you could deliver speeches. So for those of you who would like to have the experience of delivering a speech live, I will ask for your names and for your availability, and we'll try to find a common time together so we can set up a Zoom. For those of you who would prefer to record your speeches and upload them onto our Moodle site, I will give you the dates in which you can do that, and then your classmates will respond to the speeches that you've uploaded to the Moodle site. So the idea is that you get to choose, and again, I'm trying to be as flexible as possible. And I'll talk a little bit more about the speeches themselves as we continue on. But you can see that the syllabus says it's assumed you'll have a good dictionary thesaurus for reference. Not that I'm expecting you to buy any more books. I assume your computers already come loaded with this. Though I must say that dictionaries and thesaurus probably are very useful in English classes and perhaps less so in public speaking classes. Now, I teach both disciplines, English and also public speaking, as well as some media classes. And I can tell you that while there are multiple similarities between writing a paper and delivering a speech, there are also differences as well. And the main difference is in the delivery, in that you don't have the ability to edit and refine and change until you've got perfection, the way you would with a piece of writing. And that's perfectly fine. And in fact, we'll talk about how to prepare for a speech so that you know the information enough so that you can speak in the moment, but not be over prepared to the point that your delivery sounds stilted or it sounds as if you're reading, which you don't want to do. So, in relation to thinking about a dictionary and a thesaurus, well, it's certainly useful to prepare for a speech. It might be less important because you're not going to have the kind of precision with language when you're delivering a speech than you would when you were writing. And under the course description, you can see that from the catalog, it indicates this class discusses the principles of public speaking as communication, stressing the role of speaker in the communication process. The course emphasizes the proper preparation and delivery of speeches. Each student delivers a minimum of 5 speeches and participates in small group activities. And there is a prerequisite of what we call English Composition 1 at the college, an introductory composition class. That means that you've had some experience with putting together an argument. So if you think you haven't achieved that prerequisite, please speak with me, contact me, and we'll see what our options are. But basically, there are going to be 3 graded speeches over the course of the semester that you will be delivering either via Zoom or you will be uploading to our Moodle site. And you get to choose for each of the speeches. So it isn't as if all 3 have to be delivered via Zoom or all 3 have to be delivered by uploading a video. Each speech is an independent unit. And then what we will do is have 2 practice speeches or 2 practice sessions. And I will count that as our practice speeches, and those will be ungraded. And how we can go about presenting for the practice sessions, you'll have a multitude of options, whether it be Zoom, chat, or even telephone. The idea is that you're communicating with me in one way or another in terms of some of your thinking about your speech before you actually deliver it for a grade. And the 3 speeches, the first speech is a 5-minute speech, and it happens to be an autobiographical speech. And that's a speech in which you basically tell the audience a little bit about yourself. And then our second speech is 10 minutes long, and that's an informative speech. And that's a speech in which you get to teach your audience something. And then your third speech happens to be a persuasive speech. And that will be a 15-minute speech where you try to convince us to take a position or to take an argument. And I'll talk a little bit more about the actual speeches themselves. But if you're looking at the syllabus, you can see under student learning outcomes, this is the goal of the class. That first, we will improve oral communication skills, because obviously we all have oral communication skills. We wouldn't have gotten this far in our lives if we didn't. The idea is to improve them. To develop skills and self-confidence in acquiring and presenting information. And sometimes you already know the information you're going to present, so it's just a question of organizing it. But sometimes you need to do research, and we'll talk about both of those. To apply critical and analytic thinking. And it's a term you oftentimes hear in college about being a critical thinker, not necessarily thinking negatively about something, but asking questions and interpreting and analyzing. I oftentimes say that toddlers are very good at this with their question, why? If you've ever worked with a toddler, you know that they continually ask why, and that's one of the best definitions I can give for critical thinking, is always asking why. Perhaps that's the difference between high school, where you learn what, and college, where you begin to try to figure out the why, so to speak. To develop skills and self-confidence in presenting the information. In other words, most of us don't usually have the opportunity to deliver in front of an audience, unless we're a teacher or perhaps we're an entertainer. So being an audience member and giving feedback to your peers is just as important as being a speaker and actually delivering the information. We want to also promote a greater understanding of communication, formal and informal settings. We tend to adapt and change our communication modes based on the situation. We will present ourselves differently, let's say in the workplace, than we might at a wedding. The idea is that you adapt based on the situation and the environment. And to promote each student's unique sense of voice, that you shouldn't be sounding like me or a textbook. You should sound like you. Ultimately, your personality is indeed your greatest strength. The idea of who you are is what really the audience wants to get. So you don't necessarily have to create a persona. I know oftentimes there have been suggestions like you should try to be humorous when you're delivering a speech. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't feel comfortable being humorous, you shouldn't force yourself to do so. The idea is that the audience just wants to get a sense of who you are. Now, the procedures, as I had indicated, I will post a video of myself discussing class material. And what I'm going to be doing is pretending that our class was meeting in person. If we were meeting in person, we would meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon. So therefore, by Tuesday and Thursday of each week at noon, I will post a video, much like this one. Today's video is posted on Monday because this is the beginning of the semester, Monday. But do note that tomorrow, Tuesday, is advising day. So there is no class. So basically our next class video will be this upcoming Thursday. You have a 24-hour deadline to watch the class video for that class and answer the corresponding attendance question in our class discussion forum. And do feel free to ask me for an extension if you need more time. There's absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. And your answer on the class discussion forum is your attendance for that particular class. And then any additional interaction you have with your classmates in the discussion forum is considered to be participation. And it's optional. It would be similar to you, let's say, participating in a live class, raising your hand. I know some students learn best by participating, others learn best by listening. So you can decide how much or how little to participate with your peers. However, you should read all of the discussion forum responses from your classmates and my responses to them as well, because this will simulate the most closely of what you would have experienced if you were in an actual live class. And again, I indicated I will hold optional class chat sessions Tuesdays, 1:30 to 2 o'clock. Optional Zoom class sessions Thursday from 1:30 to 2. No penalty for not attending. Think of this as another opportunity for participation. We will have 4 quizzes over the course of the semester. I've tried to divide the semester into quarters. As you know, this is a condensed semester. Since we are starting mid-semester, it's very similar to what we would experience during a summer session. And I also teach during the summer session, by the way. So I basically have this class set up the way I would have my summer session class set up. And what I will do is I will post those quizzes, and they will be open book, open notes, so you can respond to the quizzes by using the classroom textbook and our videos and any other information, and send that back to me via email, ruiz@gcc.mass.edu via PDF, and then I will return the graded quizzes to you via email. And out of those 4 quizzes, I dropped the lowest quiz grade. So if it turns out you don't do well or you needed to miss a quiz, that would be the grade that would be dropped. And class procedures include class discussion and group work via online discussion forums, mini lectures via video, and student speeches, again, that can be delivered live either via Zoom or pre-recorded and posted for class viewing and feedback, as well as you can participate in optional Zoom and chat discussions. So under the course requirements section, you can see that it's pretty standard. You should complete all of the reading and the assignments by the due date. As I indicated, there will be 3 graded speeches. The first being an autobiographical speech of 5 minutes. The second being an informative speech of 10 minutes. And the third being a persuasive speech, 15 minutes. And we'll talk about all of those more in depth as the semester progresses. And then failure to deliver a speech on the date assigned will result in failure for the assignment unless the student has unforeseeable, emergency, and justifiable reasons based on the evaluation of the instructor. In other words, you made a commitment with your audience to present either via Zoom or to upload your speech on a particular date, and you want to honor that as much as possible unless there's an emergency. Again, periodic quizzes will be given, announced in advance. There are 20 questions, mostly short answer, but some multiple choice and true false as well, based on the class videos and the class textbook information. And I do drop the lowest quiz grade. Generally speaking, no makeup quizzes will be given, so that would be the grade that you could drop if it turns out that you needed to miss a quiz. And there's also an institutional disability statement that you may be familiar with if you've taken other classes here at GCC. And I wanted to read that to you, that GCC values inclusion and equal access to its programs and activities, and it's committed to fostering an environment of respect and full participation. Our goal is to create learning environments that are equitable, inclusive, and welcoming. There are aspects of the instruction or design of this course that result in barriers to your inclusion or accurate assessment or achievement. Please notify me as soon as possible. And if you are a student with a disability or may need reasonable academic accommodations, contact the Office of Disability Services as soon as possible. And you can see that there's a website and a phone number included with that as well. So in terms of the speeches, what it is that we're going to be doing, as is listed in the section under speeches in the syllabus, we will examine the following principles of speech delivery. Number 1, discovering and limiting the topic. So I've already given you a general sense of the 3 graded speeches that you will be delivering. And of course, you'll have 2 ungraded speeches that are part of your practice for these 3 graded speeches. But that said, the topics are very broad. For an autobiographical speech, you need to decide what exactly are you going to share about your life. Will it be a life history of highlights because you've got only 5 minutes? Do you want to focus on a particular time period or a particular topic or theme? The same with the informational speech. What is it that you want to teach us about and what's reasonable in 10 minutes? And the same with the persuasive speech. What exactly is it that you want to persuade us of? How controversial do you want to get? And you're free to be as controversial or as not controversial as you'd like. So you basically need to find a way to limit your topics. You also have to adapt to the audience, but in some ways you have an advantage because the audience is made up of our class. So basically you are presenting to college-educated individuals. And that is a wealth of information as opposed to speaking to, let's say, the public, where you could have a variety of ages and educational levels. Gathering information, and sometimes you might already know all of the information for what it is you're going to be presenting, which is what I suspect you will find with the autobiographical speech, that you probably have already enough information so that you could start to put together that speech now, because the speech, the content is about your life, something that you know very well. That said, it could be that for your informational or persuasive speech, you aren't quite as familiar with the information. Or even with your autobiographical speech, perhaps you want to get some information from family members or do some ancestry investigation. And this could be your excuse to do that. But we will eventually talk about how do we get and gather information. Organizing and outlining. Number 4 is probably the most important part of the speech, is that how do we put that speech together? All of that preparation work that is invisible when you actually deliver the speech is the work that really is going to show whether or not you've put in effort and time to get ready. Developing an acceptable style, suiting purpose and occasion. Again, we alter our deliveries based on audience and expectation and environment. So how do we adapt to the expectations of our audience and our environment? And then practicing, as I said, I wanted to set aside some practice time where you could practice with me either via Zoom or chat or even via telephone. Again, I want to try to be flexible. And then finally, presenting the speech itself. And then when we think about coping with communication apprehension, that also is a major element of giving a speech, that oftentimes people feel nerves. That's very common. We'll talk a little bit about actually trying to control our nerves and using them to our benefit. And active listening, responding to the speeches of others. Not only are we delivering our own speech, but we get to watch and hear other people's speeches and give them feedback. And that's really the way that we develop as public speakers, by having all of these examples of speeches. So again, the 3 graded speeches, we'll talk about the guidelines in class, and you'll choose your topic with my assistance. And I do want to approve the topic ahead of time. Outlines are required for all 3 speeches, and that's one of the things we'll be talking about, is how to construct a good outline for a speech. As opposed to the kind of outline that you might write for a paper, there will be similarities, but probably differences as well. The paper outline would probably be much more detailed than anything you would have for a speech, because you're delivering it and you don't want to read the speech to your audience. You want to have a level of spontaneity with your audience. I will look at the outlines. In the real world, you would never show your outline to your audience, but think of this as a kind of workshop where I'll take a peek at your outline. I'll ask you to send that to me via email, and then I will return it back to you. And I will evaluate it in a very informal way with the checkmark system of an excellent, which is a plus, or a good, which is a check plus, or satisfactory, which is a check. And that's where most people end up. And some perhaps feedback or ideas of how you can improve your outlines. The outlines are very individual. Basically, the test of whether or not you've got a good outline is whether or not you've delivered a good speech. Now, video recording. One of the best ways to improve your own speech delivery is to watch and analyze your own performance. So, I'm not above offering you a little bit of extra credit to do that. If you do record and then watch your performance, and after watching your performance, write a very brief review of the strengths and weaknesses of what you saw in your performance, about a paragraph or so, I could give you 5 extra credit points on the quizzes. The quiz is 20 questions, so there are 5 points per question. So this isn't a lot of extra credit, but basically this is perhaps a small incentive for you to at least watch yourself at least once. It's a very informative exercise to be able to watch yourself actually and hear yourself deliver a speech. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to the point of delivering speeches. Attendance, as I indicated, it will be basically watching these class videos and answering the attendance discussion forum question within 24 hours of when I post videos. And I will be posting videos by noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And again, if you needed an extension, ask me. I'll be happy to grant it to you. Consultations, again, you can meet with me by appointment. There is a section here on conduct and demeanor. It's never been an issue in any of my public speaking classes, but I thought it needed to be said that each speech is the equivalent of an examination, so both the presenter and the audience should treat it with the appropriate respect. And inappropriate disruptions will be negatively reflected in your final grade. I'm going to skip the plagiarism section. I'll go back to that next class and go to grading, and these are approximate percentages. 10% is participation. That means watching the class videos and answering our attendance questions. 10% are the outlines. You will be doing an outline for each of your 3 graded speeches. So you've got 3 outlines that are graded on an informal checkmark system. Speech number 1, the autobiographical 5-minute speech, is 20% of your grade. Speech number 2, the 10-minute informative speech, is 20% of your grade. Speech number 3, which happens to be the 15-minute persuasive speech, is also 20% of your grade. And then lastly, the 4 quizzes after I dropped the lowest grade and added any extra credit points you may have accumulated is 20% of your grade. So basically, slow and steady wins the race in this class for an A excellent, B good, C satisfactory. As I like to say, I don't think we should be thinking about any letters lower than C, especially on the first day of class. And then you can see that I've included a course outline as well as a speech rating sheet. I'm going to skip that speech rating sheet for now. We'll revisit that as the semester progresses. It gives you an idea of how we'll go about evaluating speeches. But the course outline basically indicates our plan for the semester as a whole, with a couple of caveats that dates and assignments may be subject to change. And the reading should be completed before the dates indicated, so this will give you an idea what we're doing on this date. So today happens to be introduction, and that's on the 26th of Monday, on not the Tuesday the 27th, because there is no class on the 27th. That happens to be advising day. So I know that people are adding and dropping classes and so forth, and it turns out that this class is small enough that I can actually assign us a reading day, which is what I have assigned for Thursday on the 29th, and that you are going to be having a reading day where Basically, you don't have any obligations. What I will do on that particular day is I will post a very brief video just asking if anybody has any questions or concerns that they wanted me to address, and I would be happy to do that. But there isn't any particular obligation on that day for you. The class begins, as far as I'm concerned, on week 2. Where on Thursday, the 3rd of November, I'll cover 3 chapters in our textbook. So you should have those 3 chapters read before the 3rd of November. And the chapters are Chapter 1, Speech and Higher Ed, Chapter 2, Getting Started, and Chapter 3, Critical Listening. And you can see that on the 5th of November, I've got 3 other chapters. Chapter 7, Organizing and Outlining Your Speech. Chapter 8, Beginning and Ending Your Speech. And Chapter 9, Wording Your Speech. And then when we go into week 3, you can see that on the 10th of November, 3 more chapters. Chapter 10, Delivering Your Speech. Chapter 4, Public Speaking and Cultural Challenges. And Chapter 5, Understanding Your Audience. And on the 12th of November is when I will be posting our first quiz, and you can see what chapters it would generally be covering. And it's also when we would be setting aside some time for you to deliver or at least discuss with me your speech. That would be your practice speech. And then if all goes well, on the 17th, all of us will present, whether it be through a live Zoom session or you will be uploading your speeches, depending on what your preference happens to be. On the 19th, you can see that we've got 3 chapters scheduled. Chapter 6, Finding and Using Supporting Materials. Chapter 11, Using Visual Media. And Chapter 12, Speeches to Inform. So we move to the 24th, which is a Tuesday. This is our second quiz. And again, very similar, that there would be an opportunity for us to touch base and to have some sort of practice. So you can hear the phone is ringing in the background. This happens to be my living room here. Some of the challenges of not being necessarily in a classroom. So I apologize for that. On the 26th, you can see that we've got a Thanksgiving class, so we wouldn't be meeting. On the 1st of December is when we have speech number 2. That happens to be our informative speech. On the 3rd, we have Chapter 13, which is Speeches to Persuade, and Chapter 14, Argumentation, Critical Thinking. On the 8th of December, we have quiz 3 and also an opportunity for practice communications. And then I've got 2 classes scheduled for the persuasive speech, just because the persuasive speech is longer, on the 10th and on the 15th. So we'll divide it up over 2 classes. And then our very last class will be the 17th of December. There is no final examination, but that just happens to be quiz number 4, chapters 13 to 14. And that basically takes care of our semester. So in terms of today's practice question, or today's attendance question for our discussion forum, I just wanted you to introduce yourself and to tell the class a little bit about yourself. And you can tell as much or as little as you like. As I indicated, next class, I'm just going to post a very quick video asking if you have any questions or concerns about the syllabus, and that will be your attendance question. Do you have any questions or concerns with the syllabus? If you don't, you can just say no. If you do, you can certainly ask your question, and then we will begin in earnest on the 3rd of November. So I hope you're all doing well. I am doing well, and I look forward to hearing a little bit more about who you are and why you are taking the class. Take care. Bye-bye.